Well,
Nice.
everybody, I think we're going to get started. And just in the spirit of trying to keep us on time, first of all, happy Earth Day, everyone.
Yay!
Yeah.
I'm wearing my Earth Day hat.
Yeah, and it's good to see a lot of familiar faces popping in, and you know, we're just really happy to be able to connect, you know, still connect in some way. And so I'll just start by introducing myself. My name is Lee Ball. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer, and we decided to have a virtual Earth Day event in lieu of our planned activities for today that we were going to do on campus. And so, you know, we're still rocking and rolling and doing a lot of stuff, and we just wanted to acknowledge Earth Day. It's a very important Earth Day. As most of you probably know, this is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and so welcome. Really quickly, my plan is I'm going to share my screen really at first. I'm going to show you the program, and let me get that going here. Okay, so I'm going to go over this really quick, just so everybody knows. This PDF is in the chat function. So if you want to go over to the chat, you can open this PDF up and you can have access to it because it will go away pretty quickly. So I'm going to start with our welcome and opening comments, and then we're going to transition into some announcements by Jennifer Maxwell from the Office of Sustainability about the Food Resource Hub and what's going on with it right now. And then Carla Ramsdale from Physics is going to talk about energy efficient cooking tips. And then she's going to be followed by Jonathan Pearson, which we all need to welcome as the university's new energy manager. And he's going to give us home energy tips. And then Rebecca Walton from the Office of Sustainability will talk about student outreach, education, and what our ambassadors are up to right now during this time. And then Jennifer Maxwell will be back to talk about zero waste at home. And then followed by Jim Dees, who will talk about our climate action planning a little bit and give a little brief update. And then we'll hopefully finish with some discussion prompts. And those prompts are listed here. And so these are just some ideas. We're open to you know, any type of prompt that you may have that you can share into the chat. So with that, I'm just going to kind of get us started here. I wanted to just go over a few ground rules. So if you don't mind, please be respectful and considerate. And we're going to keep this upbeat today. And we're going to try to keep all of you muted unless it's time for you to speak. We do recommend furry friends. So if you've got your animals, put them on your laps. We'd love to see that. That's become part of Zoom life. Not your beard, Jim. We also wanted you to know that we are recording this. So if you're not comfortable being recorded, then you may want to just put your name up instead and turn your video off. But this is something that we are recording. We're not going to be recording this screen very often. We're going to have a lot of pictures and slideshows and different things. But we are recording that so that we can share this again with others that can't make it this afternoon. If you have questions, then post your questions in the chat. We're going to be monitoring our chat, and then we're going to let the speakers respond to the questions. We may even call your name and, you know, let you repost your question if you prefer. After the speakers speak, then they'll stop, and at that point they'll entertain questions. All right, so, you know, monitor the chat also for resources that we're sharing. We're going to be sharing links and a wide variety of resources throughout the roundtable today. And we wanted to get information in your hands. All that information will be accessible to you afterwards. So if you missed something, feel free to email us, and we will, we're going to capture everything in the chat, and we'll be able to share it back to you. If you have resources feel free to share your resources as well. We want this to be an exchange of ideas and information and inspiration. All right. So a couple of announcements. We have an Earth Month book club that we're also promoting through the Office of Sustainability. We're reading the 2012 book, Active Hope. Some of you may have heard of it or seen it. This book is rather timely on the moment, at the moment. So Active Hope, How to Face with the Mess We're In Without Going Crazy. And it's resurged as a book within the climate community, especially right now during the COVID crisis. So it starts with a prompt. When I consider the condition of the world, I think things are getting ... And then she says dangerous, frightening, out of control. So those are a lot of feelings that, that we're all experiencing right now, even, in addition to the climate crisis. And, but the book is about the importance of facing these painful realities as a starting point on our journey to find and offer and receive the gift of active hope. So if you want to join us Wednesday, the 29th, we're going to have a Zoom book club about the book. You don't have to have finished the book. You don't even have to have read the book if you want to talk about this concept of active hope. Just please Zoom in and share with us. It'll be great. And we're also doing a daily challenge that we started on April 1st to celebrate Earth Month. So the daily challenge is every day we have a different theme that the Office of Sustainability is promoting for us basically to share different types of activities that support just kind of being active. And so you can see on the screen here, we have Sunday journaling, Monday physical wellness, Tuesday energy conservation, today is nature, Thursday is mental wellness, Friday supporting community, and Saturday is homesteading. And every day is something different. So it's been fun to to try to do these, and we've been posting pictures and sharing experiences. So if you want to play along and join us on our Earth Month's journey, feel free to follow us on all of our social media. Instagram and Facebook is basically where you're going to be able to find more information about that. I wanted to talk about the history of Earth Day a little bit. The 50th Earth Day is kind of an amazing benchmark. A lot of people refer it to as the beginning of the environmental movement. However, the environmental movement really started in the 60s, in the early 60s, with the a lot of people say the publication of Silent Spring. 1962 was kind of the start of the environmental movement, Rachel Carlson's book. But in 1969, it was pretty interesting. There was still to this day, the third largest oil spill occurred in Santa Barbara in January of 69. And then in June of 69, the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland caught on fire again. And so that really led to a Wisconsin senator named Gaylord Nelson created Earth Day in 1970. And it was a national teach-in designed to take place between spring break and final exams. And so that, thousands and millions of people around the world hopefully would, observe and be active and do things. They claim the first year, approximately 20 million Americans engaged in some way in the first Earth Day celebration. It's hard to really put a number on that, but that's one estimate. And a lot of this led to Richard Nixon, who was conservative president, signing the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Endangered Species Act, and the Environmental Protection Agency was founded right within a few months of the first Earth Day. So it was a pretty transformative time in 1970. So that brings us to now, the state of the world that we're in now. And fast forward to 2020, and we have, we're in the midst of a very serious climate crisis, and then, add the COVID-19 situation that we're in, and it's it's a time that none of us really could imagine that we would be Zooming on Earth Day like this. The climate crisis has really been something that our office and many around the world have been really focusing on in recent months and years. And there's been a lot of headway. There's been a lot to be optimistic about, but there's a lot of action that still needs to be taken. Then you layer in COVID, and it can be pretty depressing to really think about what's going on with the state of the world. There's a lot of people that are struggling right now, clearly on a lot of different levels, and we may just be seeing the beginning of it. So, but it gives us an opportunity to reflect, to give us an opportunity to change. And overnight we all learned how to Zoom. So overnight I feel like we can all learn how to use less resources and be better stewards of the resources that we have. So those of us that are in kind of the sustainability education field that preach behavior change, we feel like that we've got something to lean on, kind of coming back into this when we all re-enter. We're going to be really pointing out, a lot of the actions that we're going to have to take to really right the ship in the right direction if we're going to do something about solving the climate crisis. So there's a lot we can draw from this, and I know a lot of people around the world are still really working hard, and the urgency around climate change hasn't gone anywhere. If anything, it's amplified right now. But the COVID crisis has given us all a little time to in a lot of ways re-energize. And so I can speak for my team. We're pretty fired up at the moment, and we're just excited to continue this work. And speaking about it on Earth Day is an honor. And so with that, I'm going to pass the torch to our next speaker.
Lee.
Yes.
Just for a moment. Hi, I'm Leela. I'm the communications specialist here. And I've had a lot of fun compiling a whole photo gallery of Earth Day stuff that's Appalachian specific. I will share the screen here and just show you guys how it looks, how it works. Here we go. So it's on our Flickr account, and it mostly goes in reverse chronological order, but there's some other stuff in there. And it's got all kinds of photos and archival stuff, articles. It's been really interesting to compile it all, and I will put the link to it right here. And please go through and look at stuff and read that a lot of the stuff we're fighting and working toward isn't new. That was what I saw looking through tons of old newspapers and articles, is that none of this is really new. Some of the players have changed, but a lot of it's very similar. But yeah, please check that out. And if you have any pictures or stories or anything like that, send them our way and we'll include them. Thanks.
Okay, I think it's my turn. Hello, everyone. Happy Earth Day 50. I'm Jennifer Maxwell with the Sustainability Office, and I wanted to just give you some updates on our food hub. I'm going to also share the screen here with a picture. Give me just a sec. So we have continued to be open. And this little picture here from the front. So we started out, when this all started, we kind of did some limited hours, and then we've continued to be open throughout this. We are basically by appointment, and we've been putting some food bags out. So calculated this morning, we have shared about 100 shares since this all started. So we're still very active. We've been taking turns and going in the office and putting together food bags, and that's the way we've been doing it. And also we have a lot of personal care stuff. We've been able to continue to shop with our fund that was created for food insecurity. And so if you know of anyone who's in need, and if you wouldn't mind spreading the word to your areas, they can email us at sustainability@appstate.edu. I think that address will be in the chat as well, or I can add it to the chat, just to get the word out about the food pantry being a resource. I'm gonna go, let's see. I think at this time I'm turning it over to Carla. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Carla.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jennifer, perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Carla Ramsdell. I work in the Department of Physics and Astronomy. I'm a food physicist. I study the energy of the food system. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share some Earth Day tips. I know we are all home. This is not all bad news. I believe home cooking has had a major uptick recently, which is fabulous for the future of our food system. It's not till we really take back a love of home cooking that we can incorporate some food that's more gentle to our planet. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody here, so keep me on track a bit. So again, I'm just going to go through some energy efficient tips. Absolutely, anytime you have any questions or whatever, feel free to reach out to me. And you can also just interrupt as I'm talking. I'm fine with this being a pretty casual talk. So if anybody has questions, you can just chime in, just take yourself off mute. So is it even important or necessary to be having this conversation? Absolutely. This latest UN report found that 37% of our greenhouse gases come from our food system. So it's an area that was really very underrepresented until pretty recently. You hear about light bulbs and transportation and electricity generation, but very rarely did we hear any significant input about the food system, and it ends up being a pretty major player. So if we look at this EIA estimate of residential electricity consumption, I decided to just really focus on the house because we're all home. So we might as well stick to the things we can do there to try to improve our personal food systems. So what we see down here is water heating is a big share of what we do in a house. Water is really energy hungry, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And the refrigeration is also something I don't think we take into account enough as being a pretty major energy hog. So in the physics world, we say that water has a very high specific heat, and all that means is that it's really energy hungry to change temperature. So if we take a certain mass of water and try to raise its temperature, it takes, for the most part, about 4 times more energy than it would for a comparable mass, say cooking oil, for example, right? So water is just really what we call thermally sluggish. It's very energy hungry. And so the more we're conscious of that, the more we can make an enormous difference in the energy of our kitchen. So running warm water, for example, sometimes it's necessary to wash certain dishes, but they don't all require hot water. Washing your hands and just keeping a water running while you're not really using it, especially if there's warm water or hot water coming out of there, that's an enormous consumption of water. While we're talking about water too, we boil water all the time for making coffee, tea, boiling pasta, steaming vegetables. Always interested to present the most efficient way to boil water. So sometimes this is surprising, but microwaves are not the most efficient way. In fact, the least efficient way to boil water. These standalone electric kettles are rock stars. It's like taking an electric resistance coil and submerging it inside water so you don't lose anything. Everything gets transferred to the water. So they're really convenient. Also, if you have one, I think you'll find you use it so much you don't know how you do without one, but they also are the blue line here. So they're the most efficient way. This curve shows how much water and what the energy it took to boil that amount of water. I did want to note that microwaves are not all bad. If you're trying to reheat food, microwaves are the most efficient way to just sort of take yesterday's lunch or dinner or whatever and bring it from refrigerator temperature to a warmer temperature. But any cooking typically in the microwave is not very efficient. So kind of sticking with this water theme for a minute, we can also take advantage of the fact that water is an energy hog or thermally sluggish, right? So it's bad news on one side because it means we have to put tons of energy into it to increase its temperature. But there is a good news story there also because it's thermally sluggish, it means that once you have elevated its temperature, it takes a long time to drop in temperature. And so this allows us to do what's called cook passively. And invite you to experiment with this. It doesn't seem possible, but I noticed there's like 8 things on the chat. If any of those are for me, I'm not keeping an eye on the chat. If someone wants to just interrupt me, that'd be great. Okay, so all cooking passively means is that, say you're cooking pasta. I'm an Italian. We cook a lot of pasta in this house. So you can do that passively, which means just bring water up to boil. First of all, don't bring too much water up to boil. The box of pasta tells you to boil 4 to 6 quarts of water. That's just a ridiculous amount of water. And think about, since it's energy hungry, how much energy that wastes, right? So first of all, a box of pasta in general only needs about 6 cups of water. That will not seem right the first time you try it. You will think I'm crazy, but just give it a try. It actually works pretty well. Bring it up to a boil, dump in the pasta, stir it for about the first minute. That's when you get the potential stickiness between pasta. And then once you've distributed that starch in the water, you can just let it be, put a cap on it, turn the burner off completely, and just let it sit. Again, because water is thermally sluggish, it'll stay pretty close to boiling for that 10 or 12 minutes it takes to cook the pasta, and you put no additional energy in. Great news. Also, you can do this on a small scale. If you're just cooking pasta for yourself, if you're in a dorm, for example, or if you just want lunch for you and not for anybody else. I do this in hotel rooms also. I bring along some pasta. Just take a travel coffee mug, break the spaghetti in half and dump it down, add boiling water, which you can get from a coffee maker or whatever, and a little bit of salt, and just let it sit, drain the water off. It's a super low water, low energy way to cook pasta really easily. All right, transitioning to sort of look back a little bit of the whole kitchen, we see a lot of different potential energy hogs. If we were trying to determine which appliance in our kitchen is the biggest energy consumer, we have the microwave's a possibility, the stovetop, the oven, the dishwasher, the refrigerator. There's lots of other smaller appliances. But if we were really saying which consumes the most energy in the day, the winner actually is the refrigerator. Not many people think about that. When the oven's on, at that moment, it's using more energy than the refrigerator. But the thing is, the refrigerator's on 24/7, right? You're on vacation, the refrigerator's still on. You're sleeping, you're at work. That's just, it's a constant energy drain. And so because of that, we want to be sure that we're being really conscientious about high efficiency refrigerators, and also to try to unplug a second refrigerator. It's a really common habit to get a new Energy Star refrigerator, which is great. We put that in our refrigerator in our kitchen, and then we take that old inefficient refrigerator and plug it in the garage or something. And so we didn't do any good, right, in buying this efficient refrigerator. Just try to do with one, size it appropriately for the size of your family. It's actually the biggest hog of the kitchen. Looking at that picture of the kitchen again, the oven is also a pretty significant drain. Think really closely about using the oven. There's a lot of things you can do on the stovetop rather than the oven. When you turn on a big regular oven, you heat up 35 pounds of steel. And so the more we can kind of scale back and use cast iron skillets, for example, I make a pizza on a skillet, which is, if you're making a pizza for 1 or 2 people, it ends up being a whole lot faster, and you don't waste all that energy of heating up the whole oven. If you do heat up the oven, because some things are just better there, think about multiple meals at a time, right? Once that oven's hot, it can do so much for you. So load it up. Think about making a loaf of bread, roasting some vegetables. I'm always putting granola in there. We burn through a ridiculous amount of granola in this house. So pretty much whenever the oven's hot, there's granola being made. Also, make some muffins for tomorrow, a quiche, whatever. Just think can we think ahead a few meals and do them all at one time? It's a lot less energy to heat an oven once and use it for a couple hours than it is to heat an oven 3 separate times. Also, smaller ovens are better, right? So toaster ovens, if your stuff fits, typically is better. Bread machines are better for a single loaf of bread than heating an entire oven. Solar ovens are also amazing. I understand that probably many of you do not have a solar oven at home right now, but if you ever want information, they're phenomenal. The Office of Sustainability has some also. I have ridiculous a number of them. I've done research on them. These evacuated tubes here are really the efficient rock stars. So if you ever want information on that, just reach out to me. I'm happy to share what I know about it at least. And then the last appliance I wanted to just give a cheer to was the Instant Pot or any kind of electric pressure cooker. These are incredibly energy efficient. They're well insulated for one, and you can have these churning for 2 hours and you can still touch the outside. That tells us that most of the energy that goes in stays in. It also cooks at higher temperatures, which means much lower time. And I find it's a way that I can sort of detach from a lot of packaged foods. For example, this pumpkin that actually was our fall decoration this year in the middle of our table. When fall was over, it got put into the Instant Pot, and then I just had some pumpkin pulp to replace a canned pumpkin I might purchase. So it makes a lot of vegetables that are long cooked much easier. And then the final note I just wanted to note was that we have to be cautious about what we eat, not just how we cook it. This is Environmental Working Group put out this greenhouse gas emissions. So this is the equivalent carbon dioxide emissions of our food choices. We see our dried beans and lentils down here on the very earth-friendly side of the scale, and then our ruminant animals, lamb and beef on the high end. So I'm not a vegetarian. I do eat meat, but I try to replace meat with beans as much as possible and very often, even if it means you just substitute 50%. So this is one of my favorite lentil tacos. You can barely see the difference between a lentil taco and a beef taco. And obviously there's a gajillion bean burgers out there recently too. So again, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Even modest reduction can make an enormous difference in our greenhouse gas emissions. That does it for me. Yes.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
The air fryers are really popular right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the major selling point of those is that it's less fat because you're not using as much oil to cook things. Is there information yet on those energy-wise?
It's a great question. I have read some reviews on them. I'm not a huge fan yet. So I have heard them called not much more than a glorified toaster oven with a really good convection. So if you buy a convection toaster oven, you probably can accomplish the same thing. I have a halogen oven in the lab, which is very similar to an air fryer. There's a very narrow band of food that does really well in there. So if you have tons of kitchen space, I mean, I'm not into consumerism either, but in general, I'm not sold yet, but honestly, I haven't taken data myself.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Carla, it's Michelle Novacek.
Hey, Michelle.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. What do you know about those Rinnai hot water heaters? Is that a sweet thing to do for the environment?
That's a good question. I imagine there's somebody on this call that's more knowledgeable about those than myself.
I've done a bunch of research on them.
Perfect.
And I would do it. I'm planning on doing it in my house because I've got a 60-gallon water heater that came with the house. And you got to talk about that thermal mass of the water and how much energy it takes. And you are keeping that at that temperature. Now, if you've got 100 people in there and you need that supply all the time, fine. But I looked at my house and it's the #1 energy user on my house. And I'm switching to one of those. The problem we've got is because our water's so cold, in order to get the water hot enough, you have to get a fairly large one. So I'm not looking at the Rinnai, I'm looking at the electric ones.
What about, does anybody know anything about induction cooktops? Are those any better?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Huge fan of induction cooktops. So we all should be moving away from gas, right? Move away from combustion as much as possible, electrify whatever we can. And induction cooktops are by far the most efficient electric cooktop that there is. They're also really good on response time. So if you're used to cooking on gas, where, you get a pot that's boiling over and you turn it down and there's an instant response, the induction works very similar. But a resistance burner doesn't, right? There's always a lag time. So that's one thing people really enjoy about the induction cooktops is they have this fast response time. So yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Cool. How do they require a metal pan or?
They do. It has to be a magnetic pan even. So it has
That's
to
what I was thinking. So no more aluminum.
No aluminum. Most stainless steels now are coming with that core built in, that all clad. Any cast iron carbon steel works great. Copper doesn't, but copper's kind of a useless cooking. if you ask me anyway. So yeah, I mean, cast iron is the like most just phenomenal cooking, and that works on induction as well as a resistance.
Hey, Carla, it's Jeremy.
Hey.
Thanks for the presentation. That was great.
Absolutely.
Is excellent.
I'm curious, do you have an idea of how much energy we use for cooking? Like what does the average person use, kilowatt hours of energy for cooking, or how does that compare to the caloric value in the food? Have you looked into that?
Oh, yeah, that's great. So my biggest resource for that would be the Drawdown book by Paul Hawken, which also I think sort of references Michael Pollan's work. So the current numbers in the United States are that and this isn't just for cooking, this is really for our entire food system, but for every 1 calorie of food we consume, we put 10 calories of fossil fuels into it. That's the United States specifically, clearly vastly unsustainable. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, it's exactly opposite. For every 10 calories they consume, they only put 1 calorie of fossil fuel in. So clearly we don't have to be here. The cooking statistics themselves, it's not a big share. If you look back at that pie graph I showed, cooking itself is in the like other stuff category. Right. So it's really refrigeration is a big enough share that shows up, and also water heating. Those are really, as far as our in-home cooking energy needs, those are the big players. Mm-hmm. And then really, honestly, all that sort of what happens in our home with cooking gets overridden by the food you choose, because the embodied energy of beef versus beans is so tremendous that you could cook the beans for a full 24 hours and not even come close to the embodied energy of the beef when it just showed up. Like you're serving it raw, so I'm not saying cooking's not important, but the food choices outweigh that as far as environmental impacts are concerned.
All right, Jonathan.
Right. Great. Thanks so much. I'm Jonathan Pearson, the new energy manager in facilities operations.
Welcome back to Boone, Jonathan.
Thank you. I am excited to be here. I wanted to thank the Office of Sustainability for inviting me to speak today. I feel so fortunate to be back in Boone, working on the traditional lands of the Cherokee people in a place that it means so much to my family. I've been asked to talk a little bit about home energy savings today, so a little outside of what I'll be working on in App State, but certainly something I'm familiar with. And we're all spending a little bit more time at home these days, absolutely. So it's reasonable enough to assume that we're spending more energy as well. So I just wanted to give a quick background here of where I'm coming from. I've been able to have the opportunity to weatherize over 1,000 buildings in both North Carolina and Alaska. And that's included single family homes, apartment complexes, schools, wastewater treatment plants, water plants, community buildings, just a number of different buildings. And this is include installations, energy audits, and quality control inspections. So as we're going through it, I wanted to kind of focus on 4 main goals here of home energy use. And that's to reduce our emissions, and then also to save money on our utility bills is just a reality. And then also increasing comfort and making these homes a little bit safer. And I put this picture of an airplane next to some weatherization materials just to try to remind myself that, yes, we're going to do the economic cost benefit analysis of these energy measures that we're going to do. We want to make sure that we're going to actually save money, but there's also the environmental impact. And this picture is from a community that we did some weatherization in Alaska, that it was only accessible by airplanes. And the economics were rock solid. We were going to weatherize every single house, the school, the clinic. And but we wanted to make sure before we chartered this 80-year-old beast of an airplane that it was going to be an environmental improvement as well. And luckily, since we were weatherizing enough buildings, we could justify it, but it's still something that we needed to consider. It was a really exciting airplane ride, but extremely terrifying as well. So I wanted to think about some things that we could do today. I'm spending quite a bit more time at home than I typically do, and I imagine everybody else is as well. So kind of echoing off what Carla just said, I tried to come up with five or six things, actionable items that myself included, could hopefully some of us could pick one or two of them to take and put to use today. So going off the refrigerator being the biggest appliance in the home, in the kitchen, using electricity, maybe today's a good time to finally pull that refrigerator out and clean those coils either behind it or underneath it, and help the refrigerator run a little bit more efficiently. A vacuum cleaner and a wet rag can be great at accomplishing that. Also a good time to check your water heater temperature. 120 degrees is recommended for maximum efficiency. If you've got a larger family, you might have to bump it up a little bit more. You might have to play around with that number, but 120 is kind of the accepted goal. Programmable thermostats has been really interesting during this circumstance of COVID, and you know, my family and I, we've got these aggressive programmable thermostats set, but we're home all the time. And so we're just, I was finding that we were going to the thermostat and overriding them. And so instead of having this great programmable thermostat, we were just staying at a constant temperature all the time. So for me, I had to kind of rethink that. And now we've got some less aggressive setbacks, but when we're working during the day, when we're staying busy and moving around, we've got the temperature going down 2 or 3 degrees and coming back when we eat dinner together, and then dropping down to the lower temperature at night too. But it has been interesting to kind of think about the programmable thermostats. Now it's also a great time to check out your furnace filters or your heat pump filters, and might not have replacements on hand, but doesn't mean we can't clean them out. Take them and hit them and clean them out, or vacuum them out too would be something good. And I don't know about everyone here, but my family is certainly getting a little bit more screen time than we typically do. So I just wanted to point out that devices matter, especially game consoles. That's something kind of caught me by surprise. But you know, if the opportunity's there, laptops or tablets are always a great option as well. But kind of the meat of what I wanted to talk to was an opportunity to maybe start an energy audit to-do list. So we might not be able to go out and get materials necessarily, but we got time to go ahead and go through the house with a careful eye and maybe make a list of upcoming projects that we could start to tackle. So in Boone, focusing our efforts, we want to make sure that we're putting our time and our money in the opportunities that make the most sense. So Boone's a heating climate. So for that, heat's going to rise. So why I mention that is because attics are probably going to be the biggest opportunity in most homes that have attics. So air sealing is the first thing I wanted to talk about. It's the most effective, affordable, and also the most overlooked opportunity that we have with weatherization. This great picture from Energy Star that shows some opportunities for conditioned heated air to rise up and go into the attic. Some of them you can see from your living space, like supply grills or attic access hatches, but some of like the top plates, you can't really see those without getting into the attic. Certainly don't want to recommend jumping up in your attic without a face mask or you know, PPE, but that stuff of course has a more important use right now. So what we can do is start to walk around our living space and take a look at the ceiling and start to make a little floor plan of where each interior exterior wall is, where the plumbing and penetrations might be, where the electrical outlets might be up in the ceiling. Because when we do get in the ceiling, we're going to want to, the picture on the right, it kind of shows where the areas where we're going to caulk or use spray foam to get the top plates, the plumbing penetrations, the electrical. And the one on the left is kind of the ideal scenario. It's really rare that you find an attic with no insulation. But the picture on the right is really more the reality. There's electrical wires running everywhere. There's old insulation. It's claustrophobic feeling. You might get lost pretty easy. But if you got that map that you took the time to go ahead and map out before you start hopping up in the attic, you can just calmly and patiently go through and try to hit each of the items that you've already mapped out that might be the source of heat loss. So attic insulation, after you've got a properly air sealed and prepared attic, is certainly going to be a huge benefit. But that air sealing really is the most important part. If you go ahead and spend a ton of money and blowing in insulation or putting new insulation in, But you haven't air sealed your attic, your heat's just going to continue to come through, and the insulation is going to act like a filter, a really expensive filter, and you're not going to see the gains that you would with a properly air sealed house. So this picture is on the left is R13, about 4.5 inches of fiberglass bat, and then the post was R60, which is more than I'd recommend in this area. I think Boone, probably about an R38 would be most appropriate, but you also have to kind of take into consideration which insulation you're choosing. Picture on the right has blown fiberglass, because the picture on the left, the original insulation was fiberglass bats. Blown in cellulose has a lower carbon footprint, and it's usually a little bit cheaper, but it's heavier. So if you're blowing on top of fiberglass bats, you're going to weigh those bats down, and you're not going to have as much insulation value. So say you've already got in your attic, or you don't have an attic, that's okay. There's still air sealing opportunities. Replacing weather strips on exterior doors is a great place to start. Adjusting those doors, the door bottoms or the sweeps that are on the bottom are a great way to keep some of that heat in. Also, caulking under sinks, so plumbing penetrations are just always about oversized, so caulk or foam can be used there. We're starting to get into the smaller stuff, but the outlet covers can help make the walls, on exterior walls, outlet covers, their little foam insulation pads behind the cover switches can help slow down that air and keep a little bit of heat in. But as you're going through, keeping an eye out for target areas. Spider webs are usually a pretty good indicator of where air's moving. They like to set up home where they can catch the bugs, and so those spider webs can be pretty indicative of air movement. Ideally, you'd be able to get a blower door, which is a big fan that goes in the door and either pressurizes or depressurizes the home. That might not be available to everybody, but it might be something we've got on the university. I'm not sure. So another form of air sealing that's really achievable and economical is duct sealing for anybody who's got a forced air system. Every home's different, so you have to go with a different approach. And so I don't typically like to throw out just general numbers, but duct sealing, it can reduce the amount of heat that's lost in a uninsulated crawl space by 10 or 30%. It can get the heat where it needs to go, is the main point that I want to make. So the picture on the left has something you might find in an unweatherized home. Duct tape is great for holding it, but tape eventually fails. So the solution is this duct mastic. It's got like a peanut butter consistency, and you smear it on all the joints, all the elbows, screw holes, seams of the ducts, and it dries rock hard. And if there's a hole bigger than maybe the size of your fingernail, the fiberglass mesh tape that's used for sheetrock makes a great filler, and then you can put the mastic on top of that, and it'll dry nice and hard. And then after you've sealed your ducts real well, insulating them is always an option in an unheated crawl space. Okay, so that's a very quick and oversimplified explanation of air sealing, but let's say we sealed up the house. We've trapped in all this heat, but we've also trapped in whatever else is in the air too. So we've trapped in moisture, we've trapped in indoor air pollutants. There's a whole science and several codes that go into mechanical ventilation for homes, but the main point I want to make is that as you're weatherizing your house, you really do need to rely on mechanical ventilation to bring in fresh air and to get that stale air out of the house to make sure that we're preventing mold or moisture growth. LEDs. LEDs have come so far that I don't really think that I have to sell them too hard. They're efficient, available, affordable, and the price just keeps on going down. But one thing I did want to talk about is, I've learned the hard way from this, but going from house to house, bringing new LED light bulbs. People might not realize it, but a lot of people are really passionate about the color of the light. So they don't find out how passionate they are until you install the the color that they don't prefer. So it's on the Kelvin scale. All the way to the left, 2200 is a yellow warm light that's people associate with incandescent bulbs, older bulbs, and then moving to the right is daylight, and that goes up to about 6,000. Schools and workspaces generally agree that 4100 is kind of the optimal level for peak efficiency and kind of the best light to work for. But when you're going for your house, you just kind of have to pick what works for you. But it's just trying to encourage people to take an extra step just beyond wattage to look at the color temperature of the light as well. So back to furnace filters and maintenance a little bit. I just wanted to go back to furnace filters and heat pump filters. I like to kind of equate it to changing the oil in your car. You can probably get away with it for quite a while without really having any issues, but eventually it's going to catch up. So I recommend setting a reminder, depending on your particular heating system, anywhere from 30 to 90 days to change that furnace filter, and go ahead and buy the biggest pack of them that you can afford, and just keep them separately so you don't really even have to think about it. You can just put them in and keep that furnace. It's going to keep it running more efficiently, and it's also going to prolong the life of the unit as well. And I couldn't underscore the importance of getting an annual test and tune. I myself even have problems when my heating system's working great. Why would I spend money on maintaining it? But an annual test and tune, it's going to get it clean. It's going to get it back up to its peak efficiency and prolong the life of the unit. And that's the really big goal there. I also put a note about not ignoring the warning signs. So if you got a boiler and you see a leak next to it, that could be a problem waiting to happen. You might also have a strange noise that you keep hearing, or inadequate heat supply if it's not producing as much heat as it used to. Heating systems don't really typically heat themselves or fix themselves, so go ahead and get it checked out by someone. So we can't talk about weatherization without talking about safety considerations too. And I'm just breezing right over some of these subjects because each one of them really could warrant their own discussion. But if you've got a combustion appliance, a heating system that relies on natural gas, propane, fuel oil, you've got to be aware of how your air sealing the home affects the drafting of that unit. We don't want to make it so tight that unit can't draft. It doesn't mean we can't air seal and do a lot of air sealing, but we just have to consider how that affects the unit and how it drafts. BPI, Building Performance Institute, has some great information on weatherizing homes and also specifically the drafting of combustion appliances. Smoke alarms and CO detectors, it's also a great time to go ahead and get those in there. The smoke alarms and CO detectors, they have 5 to 10 year batteries now. So it's a one-time purchase, so you can kind of forget about it for a while. I definitely recommend writing the installed date on either the back or the front of it, just because I always forget, and it's nice to be able to have it there. Or if you go to sell a home or whoever sells a home, they can refer to that date and maybe not have to buy new ones. And one quick note about CO detectors: if you can find one, carbon monoxide. It's the gas that you can't smell. It's a byproduct of combustion appliances, and it puts people to sleep and they don't wake up again. So they're essential if you've got a combustion appliance in your house. The best thing you can find is a combustion appliance that has an electronic LED screen on the side that shows you the current level, the maximum level, and how long it was at that maximum level for. So if you found one, you could see that you were at 100 parts per million for just a couple of minutes. You know, maybe that's not a big deal. Maybe a school bus drove by and the door was open and some walked it in. You clear it and you check again in a couple of days. And if you don't have any, no big deal. It just was a one-time occurrence. But if you start to see prolonged events for 15, 30 minutes, even at pretty low levels, carbon monoxide can start to cause some pretty big issues, headaches, nausea, and things like that. So radon's another big thing in this area as well. Radon, a naturally occurring element that is definitely linked to lung cancer and bad things for your health. So there's pretty affordable home test kits that you can get. They just leave them in place. They're pretty simple to use, and there's a lot of mitigation strategies, but it's really important too, if you're going to be weatherizing your house, to make sure you've got your radon tested, and if you do have it, that you've got a mitigation plan in place. Lead paint, anything built before 1978, you're going to have to either test it or assume that it does have lead in it. EPA's got a great guide, but definitely something to consider in older homes. And then back to mold and moisture with what I was talking about with ventilation, and EPA's got another really good guide of how to mitigate those strategies, but most of them do come back to proper ventilation of the home. And I'll just close with this. What about windows? New windows are great. They look awesome. They might make you feel warmer, but they're really expensive. So, you know, I wouldn't typically prioritize replacing windows over, if you've got an attic that could be air sealed and insulated. I typically almost always recommend going with the attic first. And there's other more affordable options. That cheap plastic window film shrink wrap, it works. It does help keep heat in. But there's also some kind of happy medium options. The top down, pull up window blinds that have 2 or 3, 4 cells even can do a pretty good job of increasing the insulated value of the window area too. So you really just have to consider your budget and see which one's the best solution for you. I just put a couple energy saving resources. BPI and Energy Star are some pretty good ones. And you know, I'm so excited to dive into the university's energy usage and just get to know everybody and work with everybody. But I also love talking about houses. So feel free to email me any questions, and I hope to work with everybody in the future. But if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Cool. Thanks, Jonathan. I believe I am next. My name is Rebecca Walton, and I work in the Office of Sustainability at App. And so I just wanted to take a minute or two to brag about our awesome student team. So we have a team of sustainability ambassadors. And so while unfortunately they're not able to do outreach on campus, they are able to do virtual outreach. So they do weekly videos. And so the videos that are coming out this Friday have to do with supporting the local food economy, upcycling and mending clothes, and energy efficiency at home. So I'm sure this presentation that we just saw will be helpful to them. So you can find their videos on YouTube and on Facebook. So I think Leila just shared that. Did you? Perfect. Cool. So while we miss them on campus, we are really enjoying seeing them dive deeper into these other topics that they're really passionate about. So stay tuned for the videos because we're really proud of them. And so I will turn it over to Jen.
Hey, Kim.
Thank you. Now can you hear me? All right, cool. So I just wanted to go through real quick and give some kind of zero waste tips from home. And I wanted to say too that, so Leila is going to be sharing a lot of these resources. We've been putting them together for you all. So there's some information in the chat, but I think she's also putting together a list. I'm going to talk about a few tips, but then we also did an article when we first went home with COVID with sustainability at home with university communications. And so there's a little bit more information out there beyond what we're giving you today. So if you want to check that out as well, it was a nice collaboration with university communications. So she'll have that in that resource as well, and some of these presentations and everything. So for zero waste, you know, in some ways, I think overall being at home, at least for our family, we're consuming a whole lot less than we have been in the past, you know, just by being home and not going out and about as much. So that's a great thing. But I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about things you can do at home. And so continuing to use reusables at home, napkins and washcloths when you're doing your cleaning and sanitizing, and also purchasing natural cleaners and making sure that you're sourcing products sustainably. When you're shopping, you can still use reusable bags. So I know a lot of people have kind of transitioned to using plastic bags just for fear, but as long as you take them with you, grocery stores are still allowing you to use them. And then you can just bring them home and launder them when you get home immediately if to be safer. Same with produce bags, to avoid plastic bags as well. We've been having a lot of fun here with composting at home, and so that's a really fun way to kind of engage in zero waste. And so setting up a compost bin, a worm bin. So we had worms at our office and I brought them home. We call our worms the Eds. And so we have them at home now. We've been taking care of them. And we also have a compost pile outside. So on that list and resource, I've put a couple links in there to ways to build compost piles out of pallets, old pallets, and recycled lumber. Also ways to build worm bins. There's a really great resource on vermicomposting at NC State, and so I put that link in there as well. Also using pallets and recycled lumber to build garden beds and things like that are really helpful as well. Just a really great thing to do, and allows you to kind of spend some time with your family and get together and build some stuff. I know Jim built and he may share it in a little bit, he's built a really cool thing with recycled lumber at his place. I think he'll share later, so pretty cool. So I also want to mention the importance still of recycling as well. If you're able to recycle in your community, be sure that you are, because it's a very important feedstock right now for toilet paper, which is why you see the picture of toilet paper. They need, all toilet paper is made from recycled content, and so they really need that feedstock. Also, a lot of medical equipment is actually made with some recycled content plastics, and so they need that feedstock as well, and so continuing to participate in that is really important. I wanted to mention too, for those of you that are parts of offices on campus that have not participated in our Green Workplace program and certification, that's a really great thing that you can do from home. And I know that Adam is on the call. Adam is our grad student working on Green Workplace, and I saw that he was on the call earlier, so you can reach out to us and connect with Adam, and you can still continue kind of representing sustainability in your workplace while you're working at home. It's a really great opportunity to, you can do the survey online, and just a really great chance for you to have something to work on if you need something to focus on. We've also moved our zero waste training online, and so we have a link on our zero waste page of our website. Also, it will be in the information that Leela sent out. So you can do a zero waste training online. It gets just really into the weeds of recycling on campus in particular, but it's a really great resource out there for you. And so again, you can access that on our zero waste page, or in the resource that Leela is putting together. So I'll stop there. I think I've covered kind of everything I meant to today, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Great, thanks, Jen. Hey everybody, I'm Jim Dees in the Office of Sustainability, the Data and Assessment Specialist, and want to give you a little bit of an update about our climate action plan. Originally, several months ago, we had scoped out Earth Day 50 of 2020 as our grand unveiling of this beautiful climate action plan that was going to lead the App State towards climate neutrality. And darn, this pesky little national global pandemic and economic collapse has kind of messed up the plans of mice and men, right? So we have had to readjust our time frame a little bit. We're now targeting early August to have this plan ready and unveiled so that we can affect the university strategic plan with some of our targets that we're going to establish in this plan. So if you will be patient with me a sec, I'm going to try to navigate over here and I'll share my screen. Hopefully you all are seeing an outline of the app CAP, as we're referring to it. And I'm just going to fly through this real briefly. I do want to give a shameless plug. We're going to spend an entire hour this Friday at 1 o'clock in a Zoom meeting and go over this stuff in much greater detail. So I'm going to give you the 50,000 foot view, share the outline with you, and one or two little findings that has come out of it. So we're going to start with a bunch of context. We've got collaboration with some heavy scientists on our staff to kind of describe the carbon problem. And so one of the strengths of our plan is the collaboration. And we feel really good about how all of this is coming together. It's not just one person writing this plan. it really is the best of that we have to offer weighing in on a lot of these things. So again, we'll start with an explanation of the problem. Then we're going to move into the history, what the university has done over the years. And you saw a little bit of that today with Leela's plundering of the history books there and finding all that stuff about Earth Day in the past. And so we're going to formalize some of that and bring it forward in this. We've signed all kinds of commitments, and we'll share those in here, talk about our first attempt at a climate action plan and how we evolved that into a strategic plan. And then we'll talk about kind of the current state of the union, where we are with our current emissions and the trends that we've spotted. And then we'll have a section of our response, kind of that answer to that age-old question. You've understood the problem, now what? You know, big deal. What are you going to do about it? And this will be kind of our call to arms, if you will. This is an explanation of why we're about to do what we're doing. One of the exciting things about this section is we're going to have a Google form where we're going to ask the community, why is it important to you? And it's just going to be an open forum where we just want to hear from you and give you a chance to voice why App State moving on this is important to you. We get it that it's global, and we kind of know some of those reasons, but why specifically does it matter for App State to do something about it? So we're really looking forward to hearing some of that feedback. We're going to talk about our process, and this is really kind of the key that makes App State's climate action plan, I think, the next level up from regular climate action plans. I spoke just a minute ago about the collaboration and getting the best of the best to weigh in on this. And if you listen closely to what Jonathan and Carla were saying, they kind of hinted at it. It's going to be a very, very holistic look and a holistic approach to the mitigation strategies that we come up with. So when you look at our outline here, section 3, A, you know, we know where our we know where our carbon is coming from, excuse me, electricity, campus heating, and transportation. And most climate action plans would assess that, make some recommendations to lower those, put them together in a plan, and there you go. We're taking this to the next level, and we've got a group of people that are going to take our mitigation strategies and look at them from different angles. We're going to run them through a natural environment group that's going to look at the natural environment impact of a particular solution. Same thing with climate justice. And then we also want to understand, how is this going to affect our resiliency? You know, the last thing we want to do is put all of our eggs in one basket and then have that basket develop a hole. And I'm going to share a screen here that shows a little bit what I'm talking about. So hopefully this is coming through on your screen well enough. The axis over here on the left, the vertical axis is death rates due to accidents and air pollution. And the horizontal axis here is greenhouse gas emissions. And so when we look at our solutions and our current situation, we see coal is up here in the upper right, meaning lots of carbon, and in this case, lots of unintended death. Oil is not too far behind that. Natural gas and biomass, surprisingly, has, you know, some death associated with it, which was kind of surprising to me. So we look at hydropower, wind, solar, and nuclear, and they're all very, 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 very low. So this is just another way to analyze and to look at some of the suggestions, because nuclear is certainly one of the options that we're looking at as how we source our electricity. So when you look at it from this point of view, good carbon numbers and good accidental death and air pollution numbers. So it's just one metric that we'll look at. And again, just to show kind of the complexity and the depth of our suggestions. We're not just going for the least carbon we can find. We want to look at it from other points of view as well. Going to get into the solutions a little bit here. We've set these goals, and if we can hit all of what we've got planned in here, we will have an 81% reduction of greenhouse gas inventory. So that's a pretty bold statement. Hopefully we will get there. We're thinking that 23% of that can come from just our behavior alone. So more Zoom meetings certainly will be one of the things that we advocate for. But again, I don't want to spend too much time getting in the weeds here. Transportation, we'll talk about as a behavior, and will be part of that 23% reduction. Efficiency, so Jonathan, we're hanging 15% of this on you, buddy, and Patrick as well. We think that there's enough meat on the bone, we can squeeze about 15% of our total energy out of our buildings specifically. And then we're going to look at our sourcing here, and just with the potential to eliminate all carbon from our electricity, we will get a 43% reduction in our climate action, or in our greenhouse gas stuff. So again, more to come on that on Friday at 1 o'clock. We'll certainly have to wrestle with offsets for the remaining portion of our carbon that we can't get rid of through these other methods. And so we have a section to talk about that. We know that there are several places in the university where we are responsible for the carbon, although we don't technically report on that carbon because of the way the institutional boundaries are drawn. Apple Card is certainly one of those. And the way the state and the national reporting is set up, we are not responsible for lease space and the public-private partnerships that we've entered into. However, we as App State know that we are responsible for that. If we weren't here, they wouldn't be either. So we do want to have a section where we kind of give a nod to that and make sure we're paying attention there. Areas for development, Carla mentioned the food piece is really big, and there is movement in that direction, but we have not added that officially to our carbon, so to our greenhouse gas inventory. So that will be a work in progress. Carla, you're going to be tapped for co-chairing a subcommittee, I have a feeling. And then refrigerants is another thing we want to look at. And then we know there's also embodied carbon, carbon that it takes to build the bricks and mortar of the buildings that we're in, and the carpets that we walk on, the furniture that we use. So we want to move into that space too. This is kind of the new frontier of carbon that we need to start paying attention to. Of course, all of it would be completely irrelevant and mute if we stayed in a silo and did not get this work into the classroom and out to the next generations. So that's paramount. If we're not doing that, we're not doing our jobs. So we've got to have a part of working all of this carbon action planning and greenhouse gas inventorying into our academic regime. And then, of course, how do we communicate our plan out to people once we have it, and what are the expectations, and how will it affect some of these other entities that are on campus. And then a quick definition of terms, and there you go. That's going to be the backbone of the climate action plan. And just wanted to share one other thing with you all, and I'll take a breath here if anyone has any questions on that before we move on. Great. Okay, well, hearing none, I wanted to share with you. This is just kind of preliminary, but this is what we're monkeying around with here. We've got some numbers from the NTE, which is actually they changed their name. I can't remember what it's about to be changed to, but we're going to go with a new energy provider here in just a few months, really, about a year and a half, I think. But there'll be a little bit of a premium. Right now, we cannot buy as much renewable energy as we would like to with Duke Energy. With NTE, that will no longer be an issue. We will be able to buy as much as we can afford. But I wanted to share this screen with you because it shows you a little bit of what that means. So say if we wanted to buy 25% of our electricity from renewable resources when we go to this transition, going to have to cough up an extra, you know, $400,000 or $400,000. And that'll only knock out about 11% of our carbon footprint. If we wanted to be bold and do 50%, you can see where the money is going. And of course, if we went, whoops, to 100%, 1.7 million in addition to the electricity cost per year for renewable energy.
Jim.
Yes, ma'am.
Share your screen, please.
Oh, is it not showing up?
Yep.
Well,
It's so
that
cool.
would be
I want
because
everybody to see it.
yeah, that would be because I forgot to push the button. Okay. There, is everybody seeing a blue with orange, blue field with orange stuff? Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So again, if we had 25% of our electricity from renewable resource, that would add approximately $424,000 to our annual cost and remove 11% from our carbon footprint. 50% would be, you know, 800,000. And if we wanted to do the full Monty, you know, 1.7 million. So we could do some sort of combination. What if we wanted to do a, you know, 33% here, and we'd like to cover the rest of that with our university-owned systems? Can we build our own capacity here on campus or somewhere in the high country? Maybe, but it's going to be pretty difficult. We would need 146 acres of south-facing university-owned land that is close to the New River Light and Power grid to be able to tie into. Just for size, a football field is about 1.3 acres. So that's a pretty good chunk of land that we're talking about. Or we could build 359 more turbines like we have on campus. So this gets to kind of the scale of what we're talking about when we look at you know, changing our sourcing for all of our electricity. And again, we can talk more about this later on after we're done the program here, or on Friday at 1. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Jim. Does anybody have any questions for Jim? Well, thanks for everybody that's still on. This is awesome. Give all yourselves a round of applause, and happy Earth Day again. I see you, Anisha, right in the middle. So now we're at the end, and we wanted to have a little bit of a discussion. And we had these prompts, and they're really not in any kind of order of importance. I thought, though, that since I'm the moderator, I would start with the stories, the Earth Day stories, just because it's fun to tell stories and share stories. And I wanted to see if anybody had any Earth Day stories that they would be willing to share. And I'll start. And it's just basically a memory of what we're missing today is, you know, sunshine on Sanford Mall. For those of you, especially the students that haven't experienced this before at App State, we have literally decades of events where we've had Earth Day celebrations on Sanford Mall. And, you know, we've had dozens of campus organizations and food and Frisbees and, you know, everyone sharing their passions and advocating for various different, you know, parts of sustainability and, you know, with the environmental movement, and now so much more, adding climate action and resiliency and social justice. But you know, there's so much to draw from. You know, all of our history at Appalachian State and the passion and our experience. We will get back on the lawn. We will celebrate, you know, Earth Day at some other time, and you know, it's, you know, we love to plan events and engage different partners and stakeholders on campus. So as soon as we're back, you can count on us. We're gonna gather and hopefully it'll be a sunny day, like, you know, the sun's peeking out now. But that's just a story I wanted to share, just that memory of so many different Earth Day celebrations that many of you here on the Zoom have been a part of, either as a student or a staff or a faculty member. And it's just something for us all to look forward to again. Does anybody else have a story to share?
Jack, did you want to say something?
Let's see, am I on now? Hopefully. Yeah, 20 years ago, we had on the 30th anniversary a student who had been working on biodiesel and had been thrown out of his living arrangement because of the processing that he was doing. But it was great because he got up in front of everybody, and while he was talking, his truck drove up on the lawn, completely powered by biodiesel. And we also followed that up with a solar-powered go-kart. So that was a great event 20 years ago. Thank you.
So for you who don't know, that was the infamous Jack Martin. Thank you for joining us, Jack.
Jack, there's pictures in the Flickr of that truck that I scanned in and put in there with Leela, and so they're in there. You'll have to check out the link. There's a few of you as well, and I think it's from that either 99 or 2000 Earth Day.
Probably unrecognizable now.
You're ageless. Does anybody else have anything to share? Come on, I know you do. Don't be shy. Can anybody remember their first Earth Day?
I don't celebrate Earth Day because I celebrate it every day.
All right, with that, then I think that we'll just move on. Feel free to share a story if you have one later. I think that I think one thing that we could maybe think about now is just really reflect on how the current situation is influencing our perspectives of the state of the world and how it relates to sustainability and social justice and resiliency. I know that having a little free time, not having to commute every day, has given a lot of us time to do other things in our lives. Thanks to Jim Dees and his family, a lot of us on our team have gotten on the sourdough bread bandwagon, and we're trying to we're doing science at home and attempting to bake as efficiently as possible. Carla,
I have two loaves rising right now. But
I would be curious to hear how this time that we're spending away from the physical workplace is really affecting your perspective on the state of the world.
I can talk a little. Personally, I know that I've been, also, hi, I'm Max. I'm one of the sustainability ambassadors. I have been really thinking a lot about doing things and getting back to not just doing classwork and having fun. I'm on the zero waste team, working on the video for mending clothes and upcycling. And right now I'm sewing on a fabric onto a hat, and that's so much fun, and I had forgotten how much I like to sew. But then in general, something that Dr. Ramsdale touched on was a lot of people having to cook for themselves again. And I've been enjoying cooking for myself again, and I know a lot of people have been trying a lot of online cooking tutorials, and especially the Bon Appetit kitchen. I've heard a lot and seen a lot from, and so I think it's really cool how people are trying to like do things for themselves again. And so I think it's a lot of fun.
I know I can say something real quick. One upside is that like a bunch of shelters are having all of their dogs and cats adopted. People don't have much going and adopting animals. So like some shelters are empty finally for the first time. Pretty cool.
One of my friends actually wanted to foster a dog here in Boone, and they had a wait list of 107 people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Well, I've been homesteading a little bit, and I've torn up our yard. I've got a little garden bed here that has my neighbor's dog prints in it. This I just made out of, you know, some old lumber that I had laying around, and a log that was laying up in the woods. I cut the ends off and drug it down here. And then I've made a handful of other beds here. So just waiting for Mother's Day for the weather to break. And then Leila mentioned, or Jen, I guess, mentioned this, my crazy contraption that I built. This little kind of greenhouse box that's on a giant stand that I can roll around on my front porch. But this was all made out of salvage material and stuff that was laying around on the property and in the neighborhood. I got the windows from an old abandoned house, and got a whole bunch of starts in there that are looking pretty good. So that's definitely turned my attentions towards home, and I'm doing a whole lot more work on our property around here. We're building trails in the woods across the driveway there, and gardens over here and gardens over there and garden beds up there, and it's just been really nice.
And I'll piggyback on what Jimmy is saying too. You know, I had the opportunity to get 2 beehives from Dr. James Wilkes' family, Sullivan. And so finally, I have the time that I need to be able to get out in my yard and plant all the pollinator gardens that I've been wanting to for years, that I just haven't had time to do. My children have learned what that looks like as well, and that includes, you know, the maintenance that it takes to keep those up, even though it's early spring. And my son, who plays travel sports, has been home, and so he's learning a whole new set of skills that we wouldn't have had the opportunity to do. So I'm definitely counting the silver linings.
And I'll piggyback onto that because I'm really interested in pollinators and specifically monarch butterflies. And so I've started just finding some pieces of scrap wood, and I've started making a place where I'll keep them once they start laying eggs on all the milkweed that I harvested last year and have planted. And the kids are helping me with that as well. And my dog was helpful enough to rip up a bunch of screens, so I was able to use those on the frames. Nice. So it's just repurposing things and not killing your dog, you know.
Hey,
so
on the pollinator note.
Yeah, we don't all have to be as accomplished as Jim. We're all just doing it on our level.
No. You can dig a hole and throw some seeds in. That's great. On the pollinator note, I got a text from the landscaping guys this morning. They started on the pollinator garden there on that real steep sledding hillside behind Roy Hill, coming down off the CDC garden, or the LLC garden, sorry.
Behind the Schaefer Center.
Schaefer Center, yep. Yep, so that's going in. today, very fittingly.
Is that the suicide hill for sledding?
Yeah,
Yep.
we stopped calling it that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, probably for good reason. It's the pollinator hill now.
Pollinator Hill. That's
Yep.
right. Perfect. We heard it from you, Daniel.
And
Has
something else that oh, sorry, Lee, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Something else that I learned actually from one of our sustainability ambassadors, probably the first week of all of this teleworking, people not being on campus, is the importance of practicing intentionality now that we're not rushing everywhere. And so she gave the example of, and it was so cute, I just love this, about how she took an hour to make her breakfast because she could. And she couldn't remember the last time she like remembered to think about making her breakfast. She just put something in the microwave. So that's something that we can all do. We can't be up to par with Jim, all of us, but we can all practice doing that and see that as a silver lining. So it's a good habit that I've tried to get into now that I have a little extra time in my day.
I was just going to ask, maybe a few of you, maybe I'll call out Michael Odom on purpose, to share kind of your experiences reconnecting with nature. I know that there are not as many opportunities to get into some of the places that we're used to, like Price Park, and some of the parks are either closed or teeming with people. But Michael has made I think a mission out of going into these remote areas, and so I was just wondering if you could reflect on that a little bit.
Yeah, happy to. So we're an outdoor family. We love being out in nature. We love hiking, but in the normal hustle and bustle of life, we're often limited to the weekends and the weather windows and things like that. And with this kind of turn in how things have shaken up, we've made it a point to reconnect. So we're starting early to get our work done so we can head out, get outside. It has become a little more challenging to access some areas, but the further you're willing to go out and work for it, the scarcer the people are. And we've done some pretty amazing hikes and had some pretty amazing outdoor experiences with very, very few people, and haven't felt at all like we've contributed to kind of some of the packed trails that you might have heard about and seen. So we've really enjoyed it. It's been a great time to just reconnect, the three of us, my wife and our 8-year-old son. And it's just been a real positive experience and a really huge takeaway for us during what otherwise is, a challenging time, being homeschool teachers and 2 adults working in the same space. It's been a really great outlet, and it's reconnected us in different and varied ways to nature and being outdoors, and really grateful to live in this place where we have these types of resources. And when we finish up here, we're gonna go and find something to do and enjoy the rest of the few hours of sunlight.
So Michael, kind of with that said, and to wrap us up a little bit, our last prompt was, what habits from the current situation will you take back to your normal life? So when, we get back to whatever our new normal, looks like, how do you think you'll, approach your family time in nature?
Yeah, I think I certainly don't want it. It's not that previously it was bad or anything. We spend a lot of time outdoors, but I think we'll be more deliberate in carving out time after work. And I'd love to see more fluid work schedules take shape after we go back to a traditional office. And just like many of us are realizing around the house now. If you have your work done at 3 o'clock, your work done is at 3 o'clock. There's no need to sit in front of your computer screen for a couple more hours. Do the healthy thing for yourself and for everyone else, and get outside. Take away some new things. So I'd love to see just a real change around that sort of fluidity to a work schedule. We mentioned food already. We've cooked a lot as a family. I'd never baked a loaf of bread before. I decided I was going to learn how to bake. And so we've been making, baking bread. So I think we found these things that we're doing together that it's not that we wouldn't have done them before, we wouldn't have enjoyed them, but we just, now that we were kind of plunged into it, we realized how connecting and how much fun they really are. And so I think we're going to intentionally grab some of those things and carry them forward with us when we go back to whatever normal looks like.
Does anybody else have something to add to that?
I just second what Michael said about food and meals with the family. It's been a great opportunity to eat lunch together every day and to eat 3 meals a day. And that's never happened before for my wife and our 3-year-old before. So just trying to find a way to spend more time together.
All right. Well, with that, we've been at this for an hour and a half. Thanks for sticking with us. Like 25 people still close, and maybe we'll take the sunshine on my shirt's cue for us to go and walk into it and get some rays. So thank you, everyone. Happy Earth Day. We have a lot to celebrate. There's a lot to be hopeful for. And we just really appreciate everyone that showed up today, your passion, your interest, and your spirit. So thank you.
And if anyone wants the links that are in there, you can either copy them yourself, or if you want me to send them to you, just send your email address to sustainability@appstate and I'll send it to you.
It's
Bye,
great to
everyone.
see all the data accumulation working on the turbine.
Oh, yeah.
So be handy, Jim. I'll call you.
Yep, I'm here, buddy. Give me a ring.
All right. See ya.
Happy Earth Day, everybody. Thanks.
Happy Earth Day.
Have a good afternoon.
Great.